this is Abina at Cross Keys Crafts. I was playing around with embossing folders recently, and I've shown you before how to ink up embossing folders and basically get the ink as well as the embossing onto the card at the same time. But I had this idea how I can have both the embossed and the depossed side on the same card, as in ink it up. And my idea was that if I've got a symmetrical image, that I could swap the card around, or rather, sorry, swap the embossing folder around on the card and ink up both the raised bits and the reset bits. And so I had to play around with this. It's a bit tricky to line the motif up. This is why I have cut my cardstock to the size of the embossing folder, because that's important. As I said, it's important that the embossing folder is symmetrical, otherwise this won't work. And also the easiest thing is to use a brayer to put your ink onto the embossing folder, so you don't get into areas where you don't want to have the ink. I have chosen for today two complementary colours, but you can also use two contrasting colours. I've chosen the Salvage Patina and the Blue Atoll. So I'm starting with the background, and background means all the motif here is reset, so that's debossed, that's at the bottom. So when I ink this up, the colour won't go into the areas that are black on here. So let me just get my piece of cardstock out of the way. This, by the way, I'm just using, I think this is just 160 GSM. You can use thicker cardstock, but that sometimes can be tricky to emboss, and I don't have any intermediate thickness at the moment. I've used mine all up and I didn't want it to be too thick. So I'm just using my small brayer, and I've inked it up. So when I go over this now, don't know how well the camera picks it up, but it basically stays on the top. You can obviously use any inks, it doesn't have to be oxides. I think the camera doesn't really pick this up, but it'll be nice. And it's a bit like gel printing. It doesn't show now, but it will show on the cardstock. So I'm putting my piece of cardstock into the fold and try to keep it there in the middle, and then I'm setting it down because I don't want it to move. So now I'm putting this through my die cutting machine. I've already tested my sandwich, so I've got the Sizzix fold away, Big Shot fold away. So I've just taken the little thin plate out here at the bottom. So I'm just using my normal bottom plate, then the embossing folder, and then the top plate on top. So sorry if the camera wobbles. Oh, I didn't tell you, this embossing folder is from Lou Collins from the Textures range. I think this is really nice. I really like this. So when I open this up now, but you've seen this before, we've got this sort of look, which is really nice. I like this. I like the contrast of this. But as I said, my idea was now to ink up the flowers in a different colours. So to achieve that, I need to change my colour. So I'm just cleaning my brayer on here, and I think I'm also quickly going to wipe my embossing folder, just because I've got some excess here on the edge. I don't want that to seep through onto the other side, so I quickly do this off camera. Now I'm using the Blue Atoll, and as before, inking up my brayer. I might not need a lot. So, and now I'm going over the other side, making sure I've got ink on all the flowers. What you see there is not on the embossing folder, it's actually underneath. bit of fluff there. Get rid of that quickly. Again, I've got a bit of excess on the edges, but I might just cut my piece of cardstock down afterwards anyway. Or I could just take it off with a bit of a tissue. So the tricky thing now is to make sure I'm going to align this now. So if I lay this down here, let's see if it sort of pops into place. Although this is obviously recessed now. So I'll have a sneak peek underneath. It won't, I should pop into place. Let me just think. No, because this is debossed now, so it won't pop into place, but I still see if I can align it properly. I'm going to put it against the hinge again, as I had it before. I can have it actually, I can see on this side here whether this is in the middle actually, because this stalk going down here now, that's offset, and this is where it should be. So I've got a very good idea with that. The same with the flowers, so maybe that's the secret to finding the middle. So I'm now folding this down. I couldn't actually also, camera doesn't pick this up, if I fold it down now without putting it down completely, I can still move it a little bit and check it that it's symmetrical, and this looks okay. So once I've done that, I don't want to move it, I can press it down now, and now I'm putting it through the die cutting machine again. As you can see, I haven't done that lots of times before, so I'm just experimenting with it again and finding the right way. So now, if it's worked, I should have both colours on there, and I do. Can you see? The only thing I have now is the colours are debossed now. The flowers are debossed. So if you wanted to have it the other way round, I think you could have done it from the other side. So do the flowers first and then the background. I might actually give that a quick try and see if that makes a difference. So I quickly do this off camera, and then I'll show you how we can turn this into cards. Okay, so here's what I found. So if you start with the motif first and then go on to the other side as the embossing folder is intended, you have got the raised flowers. And if you start with the flower motif first and then obviously ink up the background, then you get the debossed look. So decide which way round you want to do it. I also had a trial run because this the oxide was a bit spackled. I had a trial run with another Olivia Elements ink, the Lime Punch, and I actually like the look of that a little bit better. There are some areas where I've been struggling to ink up, but maybe that's just the pressure of my die cutting machine, because obviously it's quite a wide embossing folder, because funnily enough this is so much darker on this side than it is on this side, so maybe that's just the reason for that. But yeah, I think this is really cool that this works, and yeah, I'm going to turn these now into cards and have a little think what I shall do with these. So I have decided to mix and match these two panels. I'm using a square card. This is a shopboard card and it's a bit smaller. It's just 5 7/8 by 5 7/8. So I need to cut down these panels. But because I want to use these in squares and I want these squares to match, I'm going to line these two up and basically lock them into place so that when I cut them down, I know that these squares match and the motif is continuous. It's very easy to do. I've already done this here. So my idea first of all is to chop off a little bit on either side and the top, and I want to cut the right down here the middle to basically get the squares. So I'm starting on the top, and I want this to be a bit smaller than my card base. So I'm starting with the middle here. It's a bit difficult for you to see. Let me just move this all over. So I'm basically lining this up here, and so that the plastic here, can't see that at all, I'm just telling you what I'm seeing, so that the plastic is right next to the stalk in the middle, so that when my blade comes down, it should go down right through the stalk there, which it almost has. I might actually have gone a bit to the side, so I might just cut the slither off there, or I might just leave it here. So now I need to cut these to the same length. Let me just see what these are. As I said, just want to take something off the top and the bottom. I don't want to take anything off the middle. And I also need to keep in mind that when I cut these in half, I want to have a decent size that I can find the middle from. So if I go to 5.5 now, I can then easily cut this in 2 3/4, and then I know I've got squares, and I need to do 2 3/4 here as well. So again, I'm taking off the right hand side, and I'm doing the same here. These are still locked in. I hope I'm making sense there for you, but you will see once I glue them down how I've done it. Yeah, I'm trying not to get confused. So again, just trying to remind myself, so that's the top here. So I'm actually turning this over. This has come off a little bit, I think it might be fine. There we go. So what did I say, 2 3/4, and again at the bottom, so 5.5, and then 2 3/4. So, and if I haven't messed this up, then I should be left with 8 squares that I can now mix and match. So I've got these 2. Now I want this on the other card. Like this. It's not as easy as it looks. Oh yeah, like this. There we go. So I've got the motif here. So a bit out of line here with a stalk, but I think I'm okay with that. It's not quite symmetrical, but I think it'll be fine like this. So I'm gluing these down on the card bases, unless I have to. Oh, it's really out of center there at the top. I might have to cut these down a little bit more. Apologies that it's not perfect. But yeah, I'll have to cut a bit more off there, which means I then have to cut the squares down a little bit more, but that's okay. So I solved the problem by cutting just a slither off, because it was too obvious that this was not properly cut in the middle, and I also took a slither off, but on this side here. The other thing that happened with my embossing folder, because there was a lot of pressure, this cut almost through, and I lost a little corner there, and the same on this card here, a little corner's gone missing. I could ink that in. I could just maybe go in with a little brush and the salvage patina and just hide that a little bit. I think I will do that in a moment. So my idea was to, for at least one of the cards, to put a sentiment in the middle. And whilst I was thinking about which colour cardstock I should use, I looked at this. You know, I used my brayer to cut, to clean it. And I think this would be really good. Although it's just some scrap paper, it doesn't matter. I'm going to put this now, glue this now onto some a bit heavier weight cardstock because it's just paper. And I can cut my sentiment from this here, and I will have matching colours for that. And I will also, I think, cut it the same thing again in white and to then offset this. And this will be my first card. I'm doing this off camera. For the second card, I'll have another thing because I want to show you different versions. I'm thinking about either using the die set that went with the embossing folder and add some florals, but maybe I keep it a bit simpler and maybe I just put a circle in the middle with a sentiment. Sometimes cards don't have to be too complicated. You really want it to be quick sometimes. So I'll have a think and then I'll show you the finished cards. So I've cut my die cuts here, but I thought I'd show you anyhow how to assemble these if you've never done any offset gluing. So I'm using my two-way zig glue. I find that so useful for any sort of sentiments. So just on the side, I'm just going to dab it down a little bit, and I'm just putting the glue on the back here, and I can just go along here, and this is lovely because it is blue, so I can see where I have applied it, but when it dries it becomes clear. And when it becomes clear, I know it's tacky enough for me to put it down, which is almost instantly. So, and so not to get my fingers in the way, I'm just using my tweezers. Sometimes that helps. And it's up to you whether you want to offset it to the top or to the bottom. I usually like the top here, and I'm just basically I'm hovering it over where it should be, and then I'm just moving it down a little bit towards the left bottom corner. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just doing it sort of evenly, all the letters, and then I'm pressing this down, and then I can use my zig glue again if I'm adhering it to cardstock to glue it basically down onto the actual card. So I'm quickly speeding this up for the video. So checking that this is in the middle, sort of, although the whole sentiment is not in right in the middle, I'll probably go for the A in the middle. I think this would be the best, and then have the birth on the middle line there. I think this will work best. So, and I can press it down, and then this will adhere nicely. Obviously you can use other glues, but this one's fine. So I'm just giving that a quick press again from the top, and that's my first card finished. I think this is really nice. Very simple in a way, the way it looks, but sometimes you just want simpler cards, so that's really nice. So for the second card, I have just cut a little circle here with these scalloped edges. I chose this size because I was really lazy. I just had a piece of cardstock, a scrap from the other bits, that size. I could have gone bigger, but I think this is big enough. And I also decided rather than having a birthday card again, I would just go for this thank you. I cut this from a blue cardstock that is very similar to the salvage patina, so this will sit in the middle very nicely. But I thought the cardstock was a bit plain, so I decided to just come in with my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen. They call this clear overlay, and I'm quickly, just very quickly, going to sparkle this up before I glue it down. And this will be a subtle difference, but it's a little difference that will get noticed. So if I just show you that in the camera, how lovely. sparkly that is. The camera picks that up. So again with my glue pen. Sometimes if I've got smaller bits like this, I like to dab it rather than draw on it, making sure, especially on these end bits, that I've got glue in all those places. And even especially with these smaller ones, it's very useful to have tweezers to just stick it down, making sure this is not wonky. I like mine either like this or like this, like mine symmetrical. Placing this down like this, maybe a bit higher, and once it's in place I can press it down. Does overlap a little bit, but that's okay. So, and all that's left for me to do now is to glue this down, but I'm probably putting it on a foam pad. I think this would be nice for this now. So yeah, I'm not going to show you this, how I put it on foam pads. You can imagine how I do that. So yeah, these are my 2 cards, basically double inking with the embossing folder. Yeah, I'm pleased it worked out as I had it in my head. Yeah, and if you like these 2 cards, you might want to give me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of what I'm creating, you might want to subscribe to my channel. I'd be very happy about that. And I'll see you soon after I've tidied up my desk, because I've got a lot of mess here. Take care.